Hey there friends, this is Lauren from Mama's Learning Corner. I'm so glad you've stopped by today. This week and next week I've got a two-part series that I cannot wait to share with you. And it's one of my favorite topics, which is reading aloud to my children. We are in our 6th year of homeschooling, and by far one of the things that adds the most richness to our homeschool is reading aloud. And this is a video for another day, but I just kind of fell into reading aloud with my kids. But ever since we discovered how fabulous it is, we pretty much have a book, a read aloud book going regularly, almost every week. However, I know that some of you really struggle with reading aloud because you send me emails and tell me, how am I supposed to make this work with my kids? And I've got littles, and, where do I find read aloud books that are age appropriate for my children? Well, I'm going to go over a lot of those questions in this video and again in next week's video. Next week, I'm going to share with you where you can find good ideas that are free for read aloud. I know that many of us are on a budget, so free is always nice. So next week is how to find free read aloud resources. However, this week is just a few tips and tricks and ideas that I've learned along the way to make read aloud time in our homeschool by far the best part of our day. The first tip that I have is to choose a book that you as the mom like to read. And that may seem obvious, but it makes all the difference in the world. My children and I are reading The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. Page Turner. It is so good. In fact, I was going to read the rest of it the other night before I went to sleep. But that's kind of a rule that I have about reading aloud, that I don't read ahead. Because when my children and I experience the story at the same time, it is just magnificent. It's just a really good experience for all of us together. That's what makes reading aloud so special, when we can discover a book and the plot twists, that we can discover all those things together. So it's a lot of fun. But I can't recommend this one yet because I haven't read all the way to the end. And I had to kind of skip over a few parts in the beginning for my younger girls. But you'll find on my read aloud page books that I love to read aloud to my children. I'll give an in-depth review of it like I do every other book that I recommend, if I can recommend it. And you can read about whether this would be a good book for your own family or not. But the first tip is definitely to read a book that you find interesting and exciting. You know, there's been a few books that we just had to ditch about 30 or 40 pages in. It just wasn't interesting. It wasn't something that we found to really enjoy. So that's okay if you need to ditch a book. There's so many good books. Just go into one that you love. Definitely find a book that you as the mom enjoy. They are going to know if you don't like it, because it's like reading drudgery. You know, your voice tends to stay the same, that same monotone level. You know, there's no inflection. You don't get excited in the excited portions of the book. You know, your kids know if you enjoy it. So a couple that we have found to be just great page turners. That's what we call them at our house, obviously, because you can't wait to see what's on the next page. A couple that we've just loved were Bound for Oregon. Oh, we've read this one several times, in fact. And a more recent one was A Cry from Egypt, and it's by Hope Our. And we studied ancient Egypt earlier this year, and it was a great historical fiction book to go along with that. So those are two to get you started if you need some ideas. But I have a Read Alouds page where I have books that I personally have read myself with my own children and recommend. And I'll link to that in the YouTube blurb. So definitely make sure you check that out if you need some fresh ideas. So another thing that I have found out with reading aloud with my children is to let them fidget if they need to fidget. I have 4 children, as you all know, almost 11, a boy, then I have 3 girls, 9, almost 7, and 5. And out of those 4, I have 2 that are real tactile, sensory kids, and they almost always have something in their hands. Legos, usually it's a Lego, or a pencil. There's something that they usually have in their hands. And when we're reading aloud, they are certainly allowed to do whatever. If they want to play Legos, then that's absolutely fine. As long as it's quiet and not distracting to anyone else, I'm perfectly okay with that. Other options that we've done before are matching the socks in our huge sock bin. Folding towels, because that's one of their jobs as well. My littlest girl, 5, loves to color. She is a colorer. So she often has her crayons and her coloring book out, and that's absolutely fine, because I know that if her little hands are busy, her brain is hearing everything and processing all of the story that we're reading. So totally fine with me to let them do something tactile while they're listening. In fact, for some of my children, I really think it makes them listen better and absorb more of the story. So don't be put off if your kids find that they want to do something with their hands. Just find something quiet for them to do. Lastly, one of the many tips that I have learned with my children as we've homeschooled, and reading aloud has always been part of that process, thankfully, is to find out where reading aloud can fit into the rhythm of your day. You know, some of us are more routine, from 1 to 1:30 we will do this, from 1:30 to 2 we will do that. And then, and that's absolutely fine if you need to schedule your days like that. But for some of us, we have more of a routine and a rhythm to the day. And so figuring out where reading aloud fits into that is key. Because if you just kind of put it on the mental to-do list, but it never, but you're not intentional, it just isn't going to happen. And there have been, different seasons. There's been different read aloud times in our house. Right now, it's typically right after lunch and before we have a quiet time. So it's usually about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, depending upon the book, and if I can put it down or not. Our time is right after lunch. It's a perfect segue into quiet time at our house. I've tried it several other times. I've tried it during snack time in the morning. I've tried it right after our Bible time. Tried it in late afternoon when my kids are squirrely anyway, but it's better for them to go outside than, at our house. But those don't work for us where we are right now. If we read aloud right after Bible time, for some reason we just can't get into the other types of learning that I would like for us to accomplish. So for right now, this really works for us. And part of being a homeschool mom is being willing to bend your routine when your season of life changes. So right now, our favorite read aloud time is right after lunch. You may find yours to be right before bedtime. I personally am too tired right before bedtime, so we don't choose for that particular time to read the chapter book that we're reading. There might be picture books during then, but the meat of our chapter books is usually right after lunch, and that totally works for us. So just a quick recap of a few tips and ideas that I've learned from my own children when it comes to reading aloud and how to make that just a super special time of your day. The first one is to choose a book that you as the mom think that you would enjoy. If you're not into like science fiction kind of stuff, don't choose that first. If you love historical fiction, choose one of those. Start with something that you love. Because if you don't like what you're reading, your kids will know it and they won't really care for it either. I can almost guarantee it. Number 2, if you have kids that are fidgety or need to use their hands, have their hands occupied, then by all means let them do that. Choose something quiet. Legos, like I said, folding towels. That's a good one here at our house. Coloring, something simple but quiet. And lastly, that third tip is to find a place to put reading aloud in the rhythm of your day and to consistently put it into the routine and rhythm of your day so it becomes part of that. So usually after lunch, my kids are going to say, "Are we reading our book today?" "We are reading our book today, right, Mom?" And of course I have to say yes, because I can't wait to, see what the next chapter holds too. So I'd love to hear what your own thoughts are on reading aloud. Is it something that you do every day? Do you not quite know where to get started? Does it just seem really foreign to you? So next week we'll talk a little bit about those things as well, and also where you can find free resources to help you figure out what to read aloud to your children. It's a little bit overwhelming, I will readily admit, trying to find age-appropriate material for your own children. So we'll cover that next week, so make sure you come back. And I'd love to see you over at Mama's Learning Corner. You can visit me there at www.mamaslearningcorner.com. And of course, I'd love for you to subscribe to me here on YouTube. Just click the little red subscribe button and you'll get a notification every time that I post a new video. And during my YouTube season, that's usually at the beginning of the week, every week from February to May, or January to May. And then I take a summer break, and then it'll be again from August through November. So I'd love to have you join me. If you have any questions or comments about reading aloud, I'd love to hear them. You can leave a comment here on YouTube, or you can email me. It's mama, M-A-M-A, @mamaslearningcorner.com. I'd love to see you there.